Today I'm testing out Cline. It's a self-described autonomous coding agent right in your IDE. It's a plugin for VS Code, similar to Cursor. Let's see how well it does on a real-world use case. I'm going to try and Dockerize my application so that I can deploy it to Google Cloud. The app that I'm Dockerizing is pretty cool. It's a RAG system that I talked about in a previous video. It uses Google's Vertex AI to do RAG on my own YouTube videos. In fact, I'm going to embed these words I'm speaking right now into a vector database for this RAG system. That's pretty cool. If you're interested in learning about that, you should check out the video that I've made all about how that works, but there's no need to understand any of the details of that for today's video. I'll tell you everything you need to know. So let's get started right now. I've got my project open. This is open source. You can find it in the video description. So inside of Zazenbot 5000, I'm going to type code dot, and this will open up VS Code. So inside of VS Code, you can go to the extensions marketplace and just look for Cline and install it this way, and it will appear down here. Then you'll have to select a model. So I'm going to use Ollama for Gemma 2 just to get started, but we're going to go to Claude pretty quickly. I would suggest just using Claude from the start. You'll see what I mean, why I'm suggesting that when we test it out. And here's what we're going to do. I want to Dockerize this application. So we'll add a Docker file, a Docker compose, maybe update the README, stuff like that. And the function, so there's a lot that this does. This Zazenbot 5K is an extremely advanced no, it's obviously not. But this function is the thing that I want to make available, this process question. So let me show you what this does. Process a user question through the RAG system, enhance it with metadata and a timestamp. Sure. So we take in a user's question, we return a string. This is all this thing does fundamentally. And then down here, I'm calling this. So if we were to run this function, then I would call this, or rather, if we were to run this file, we could pass this question as an argument, and then I would call it in here. But the workflow with Docker is going to be to try and expose this through an API. That's the plan here. So this folder, or this file rather, is called query rag with metadata. That's what we need to keep in mind when I prompt Cline. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got my Gemma 2 model selected. We'll see how it does. I'm going to say Dockerize this application, use Docker compose, and create a Docker file as well. Use a fast API in order to make, and then now I'm going to type at, and I can go ahead and grab a file here. So the file I want was called query rag with metadata. I'm just going to search for that, and this is the file. So I can attach it to the context in that way using a post request question in the data. Nice. All right, now I sort of got this backwards. I want to, first you would want it to do that API, then I want to Dockerize the application. Update the README. Nice. This is my prompt. I'm going to save this because we're going to probably have to try this again because we're using Gemma 2. So let's see how well it does. I'm going to just kick this off. You'll notice there's an act mode and a plan mode. So I'm going straight into act mode, and I've auto-approved a bunch of things that Cline's going to be able to do. So it's making the API request right now. And one thing you'll notice is that we track the context window. So as this conversation grows in length, this number, the size of our context window is going to increase as content comes into there, including the input prompts and then the responses. Pop over to the terminal so that we can so if I go NV top, this is going to be able to see our GPU usage, which is at 100%. And I'm using all of my memory. So my computer's working really hard to try and make this happen using Ollama. This is using a 9 billion parameter model. This is what Cline is sending off to Ollama right now. So it's given the task in this HTML sort of in these brackets, and this is just what I wrote. And then notice how it's inputting the file here. Let me make this bigger. This is really cool. So it's in order to make this file, and so that's the context, right? And they say C below for context. This is literally the prompt, what you would type into ChatGPT or Claude interface or whatever. And then the file itself is HTML with the path set it's an attribute, which is so incredibly cool. And then there's the whole content of the file, of course, in here. and let's see how the prompt ends. So the file content ends with a closing tag. This is incredible, just prompt engineering, like how Cline is working. It's totally open source, right? It's Apache licensed software. Environment details. In other words, you could take this exact prompt template and use it for your own projects without any problems. That would be legally completely fine. This is not legal advice, however. Current time, working directory, that's all my files, and then that's it. And then it kicks off, so that's the whole prompt. Okay, so here's the task. Cline is having trouble, complex prompts. Okay, it's not happy. It doesn't like Gemma 2. Let's try something else. I'm gonna pull a new model, and we're gonna use QWhen. So let's see, I pulled the 14 billion parameter model, but that one's gonna be really slow. So let's just pull the 0.5 billion parameter model and spin that up so we can test this out. So my thinking here is to just get something working locally with Ollama because it's freaking cool. But then we're gonna use Claude and we're gonna show how to actually do this task and show Cline at its kind of like full abilities. So I'll do that in just a moment. So here it's running some coder, right? So let's see if I ask it to write an elliptical curve function with Python. Okay, see how fast it works? Now, is the content any good? I have no idea, but it's quick. In fact, I kind of know the content's not going to be good, but let's go back to Ollama and use this model. So maybe I can just select it here. Yeah, it's already available. I'm going to pick QEncoder, this brand new model we got, start a brand new task. I've got this new model selected, and we're going to try this again. It's kicked off the same API request, but now it's running through this coder model. So I expect to see some output really quickly. Here it goes. Okay, I don't understand. I'm going to make this smaller so we can actually tell what's going on. So here's the task information. This is output from the model right now. It's streaming the output for us so we can see exactly what it's doing. Okay, so this isn't really working, potentially because it doesn't have tool calling or something. I'm not really sure. Attempt completion. I mean, basically it's done, right? The weird thing is it hasn't created any files for us. So this is a bit of a fail. What if I pick, let's pick the 14 billion parameter coder model, and I'm gonna exit out of this and we'll try a brand new task. So let's kick that one off. I can hear my computer spinning away right now. If I pull up a tool called NV-top, it's like H-top, but for GPU. I can do H-top as well. Actually, I think I'll need to install it. But up in the top pane here, we can see NV-top going. I'm at 100% GPU usage. All right, let's run H-top. Notice H-top has a really nice, I really like the interface with H-top. You can see all my CPUs, but you can't see what the individual GPUs are doing. My computer is very laggy. Here we go. So it is getting it done. And I have confidence that this would be pretty good. This isn't even the biggest model, of course. Like I would want to use the 32 billion parameter QN coding model, but it's working. It is like this is functioning. This works for Cline, and it's actually starting to write our code now. You could imagine this being really useful for like a long running task. For really useful. I'm trying to justify the speed here, right? You could imagine sort of kicking this off and literally like going to bed and it writes an entire like code base for you. Obviously, this is not a practical way to work because you need to quickly iterate and test this. Here it goes again. Now that we have, it's like so painful, you know, to watch this. But while this is running, I'll show you QN. So you can see the 32 billion parameter model, right? That's what we'd want to use. We're just using the 14 billion one. That's the one that's running right now. And you can see that we tried the 0.5 billion one and it just didn't work at all. But this is quite an impressive model, right? In terms of benchmarks and performance. But all of these numbers we're seeing down here, these are all the really big one, the 32 billion parameter one. So just keep in mind that it's probably not actually practical to get these sort of outputs. And you'll also notice it lags significantly behind Claude Sonnet. I'm still not very bullish on local models for very simple tasks, and I feel like we need to figure out their use case, but this is not their use case. So let me cancel this, and we're going to test this now with the full power of Claude. Under Anthropic, So I'll go ahead and pick Anthropic. Okay, close your eyes, YouTube. All right, here's my key, and I'm gonna use Claude 3.7, and I'm gonna kick off the exact same request, see how it does. First thing I notice is the context window max size has actually increased. We've also immediately started, like, do you see how much better this is, right? This is how Cline is meant to work. This is what it's been designed for. We can also see the input tokens, which was 12, and then the output tokens here. This is the amount of context, like, yeah, it's important to keep track of inputs and outputs differently because they cost a different amount. And Cline, incredibly, is also keeping track of the API cost, which sort of absurdly is already at 10 cents for this work that we're trying to do right now. So I've got Cline set up to auto approve. And so it's doing all sorts of stuff. It keeps kicking off API requests. It is actually tracking the individual cost of each API request in addition to the cumulative cost, which is amazing. We can see our context window growing as all of these requests go in and come back. And it's also doing all sorts of stuff like creating new files for us. So if I make this a little smaller, we can actually see all the work it's doing over here. It keeps creating new files. It's created a test API. It's editing the README file. It's kind of crazy to follow. It's a little bit hard to see what it's doing. Okay, so it's editing my requirements. It added requests in here. It should add fast API as well. There it is. Fast API was already added. Okay, so what it did was it added everything, and then it started building tests out so that it can test if it's working, which is totally crazy wild. Hey guys, this is a quick advertisement for my course, the AI Engineer Roadmap. If you go to zazencodes.com, you can sign up and start tracking your progress towards learning AI engineering. If I go into the ML fundamentals, tools and frameworks, I've got a lesson on development environments, and this will tell you all about IDEs and what I like to do for my development environment. I talk about VS Code in here. I also talk about Docker in here, and this is just one of many, many lessons in this course. So once you finish this one, you could go ahead and track it off, and I wanted to make this course really feel great to go through and give you a lot of information about all sorts of stuff related to AI engineering. At this point, I would definitely say that it's going overboard. But I think what it wants to do is it wants to be able to test it out itself. Because part of what Cline can do is it's sort of been told to run tests. Okay, so very fast they're like, all right, give it a shot. Docker compose up -d to start the service. Okay, let's go over to my terminal, and I'm just going to see what it's done for us. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have a clean git diff, so I can't tell if these were my changes or not. That's dumb of me, but I can clearly tell test API is new, and then obviously the Docker stuff is going to be new. So it wrote me this test file. Cool. And then let's see the Docker stuff. So here's my Docker file from Python 3.10. We're gonna, oh my, this looks pretty intense. Okay. Yeah, it didn't do a requirements. But anyway, so down here is how we're going to run our application with Unicorn. That makes sense. That's cool. Yeah, okay, this looks pretty good. And then Docker compose, let's see what that's got. So we're going to build our Docker file. We're going to run on port 8000. Cool. I've got some environment variables here. But interestingly, okay. Yeah, okay, so I had already set these in my application. So Cline, I guess, knew that these would be available, or it read my environment file, one of those two. Yeah, also this credentials is needed. This looks pretty awesome. Let's try it. I'm going to say Docker compose up -d to run it in detached mode. Okay, so it's building my Docker image. It's like installing all this stuff. Okay, while this is running, let me go back to Cline, and we're going to try and find okay, so we also have a trace of all of the files it created here. Because, okay, so this is the app, and if I come in here, what did it do for me? So it created a new file inside of my Python library called app. And this is going to run my fast API application. And by the way, this is built. I can say Docker PS, and I could even look at this. Docker logs. I'm going to just attach to it. So I'm going to follow the logs. And let's do a health check. So I got my Chrome browser up here. So if I go to, it's this URL. Let's try it. Details not found. Okay, so it's working. I don't know if it liked this. Oh, I know. Health. The status is healthy. Way to go, Cline. You did it. That's awesome. This tool is really powerful. I don't love that this cost me 30 cents though, but it does seem like it's done literally incredible. Like it's done something incredible. And for an open source tool, that is awesome. So I want to obviously try my process question endpoint. Okay, so I can access the API here, and it looks like this is running at the query endpoint. So I'm going to want to make a post request to here, but I wonder if it created if it told me an instruction in my README file how to do it. Okay, so here it gave me an example query, which is awesome, and it wants me to explain agents. Let's try and try that in my terminal. So I'm going to open up a split pane. So we're going to use curl. We're running this query. Explain the meaning of life. That would be a lot more interesting. Oh, it didn't find my credentials. Boo. Yeah, I mean, I didn't name it Google Credentials. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, close your eyes again. I'm going to fix this credentials error. Okay, so I have these are my Google credentials, just like this. It wanted them to be in this file that was like this. So I think what it expected was for it to be in credentials, that file right there. So now I've just copied my actual credentials in here. And if I look at my Docker application, actually going back here, if I look at my Docker Compose, this is a volume. So this should already immediately update. I don't think I need to rebuild anything, which is great. I can just try this again. And it's working. Look at this. So explain the meaning of life, process and question. So these are the outputs that I've written into my Python library. A whole bunch of logs coming. This is inside of my Docker container up top. And down here is, this is my client. So I cannot answer the question using the provided search results. Oh, the search results discuss, yeah, so it can't. Okay, so it worked, but I don't tell you about the meaning of life in my YouTube videos. Okay, but what do I do? I say, well, I don't know. How does Ollama work? I probably talk about that. Let's see if I can pull up a good question about that. That worked really fast. Yeah. Okay. So here's how it works, and it does. And this system's set up to deep link you into my video at a certain timestamp where I actually talk about that topic. We could try a different example. Okay, so tell me about RAG. When should I use it over agents? There we go, super fast. I'm focused on RAG and agents. I think those are, so this is like a quote, it seems, from my video. I built an AI agent to draft research papers. All right, so it sort of went with the agent route. All right, that's cool. Anyway, it's working. Cline did well. Now you might be wondering if Cline is better than Cursor. Well, I put these two IDEs head to head in a variety of programming related tasks, and I have a video about that. I'll leave it for you right here. I'm testing them on a variety of considerations like performance, cost, and user experience. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you give me a like and consider subscribing for more videos like this. So what did you think about Cline? I really loved it, even though I'm not sure that it's practical with the current costs of APIs, especially Claude, which is the most expensive. It's more expensive than GPT-4o, but it's better. It's the best coding model available, in my opinion. And even though Cline sort of promises this, you can use any model, as you've seen in this video, that doesn't necessarily work so well. The smaller models might work, but they just might not work well at all. They might not be effective because they're just so dumb, right? They're so they're so dulled, especially the really small ones that are actually going to be really performant with stuff like Ollama. And then you get up to bigger ones that do perform relatively well, like Q1 2.5, 32 billion, but that are totally impractical for running locally. So in my opinion, Cline as of current date is really a Claude engine. It's meant to work with Claude. And as you can see, it works really well with Claude. It's so beautiful, actually. The output, the way it tracks cost, it's all so awesome. The prompt formatting with the HTML and sort of referencing the context, how it does in this really nice language way. I think there's a lot to learn for builders, just looking into the very visible logging of this tool. So final verdict, Cline is awesome. Way to go. Love it. You should try it out. Is it better than Cursor? Is it more practical? I'm not sure, but I have a feeling that Cursor is going to edge out Cline, not just on user experience, but also on cost, on actual practicality of use. However, I'm going to make a whole video comparing these two. And so if you want to see that, I'll leave a link right now on the screen. Thank you for watching this one. I'm Alex, and namaste.